My name is Maren Okello. I am 41 years old. On September 14th, at 2:23 in the afternoon, a property transfer was recorded at the county assessor's office listing my home. A 3-bedroom Craftsman on Sycamore Lane, valued at $425,000, as sold. I was sitting in a client meeting in Portland, 200 miles away, reviewing load-bearing calculations on a retrofit project, when the county's automated alert hit my inbox. I opened it between slides. I read it twice. The buyer's name was one I recognized. The seller's name was mine, noted. That was their 4th document filed using my identity in 6 years. I had only known about one. Before I lay out what I found, and what it cost them when I did, I want to know something. What time is it where you are? I've learned to note the time of things. It matters more than people realize. The alert came through as a standard county notification. The kind I'd set up years earlier because my work requires me to track lien recordings and title changes on commercial properties. I am a structural forensic engineer. I investigate why buildings fail after they fail. Insurance companies hire me to determine whether a collapse was design error, material fraud, or deferred maintenance, disguised as sudden catastrophe. I spend my days reading load paths and fastener schedules the way other people read novels. I notice when numbers don't align, because misalignment is the only alignment, is the thing that has ever told me the truth about a structure before it tells everyone else by falling down. That skill had exposed fraudulent construction claims worth millions over 14 years of practice. It was about to dismantle my own family's architecture. I set my phone face down on the conference table. My hand was wrapped around my pen so tightly the clip bent against my ring finger. I didn't move. I was already running the math backward, the recording date, the notary requirement, the timeline necessary to close a residential sale in our state. Someone had initiated this weeks ago. Maybe longer. You have to understand what that house. I bought it at 29, fresh off a brutal divorce that left me sleeping on an air mattress in a studio apartment for 11 months. The Craftsman on Sycamore was a wreck when I found it. Knob and tube wiring, a cracked foundation pier on the south side, a kitchen that hadn't been touched since 1974. I bought it for $218,000 because I could see what it would become, and because I knew how to make it become that thing with my own hands. I spent 4 years rebuilding it on weekends. I sistered floor joists. I poured a new footing for that cracked pier myself, renting a mixer at 6 in the morning so I could finish before the heat set in. By the time I was done, the appraisal came back at $425,000. Every dollar of that appreciation was sweat equity. Mine, alone, in work boots on Saturday mornings while my family slept in. My mother, Lorraine, had a key. That's the detail that will matter later, but at the time it was just a practical thing. She watered my plants when I traveled for inspections. She checked the mail. She had a key because I trusted her, and because when you are the eldest daughter in a family that expects you to be both provider and proof of their success, handing someone a key feels like the smallest concession you can make. 4 months before the sale, my younger brother Darnell had asked me, casually, over a plate of ribs at a family cookout, whether I'd ever consider selling the Sycamore house to help fund his new restaurant venture. He said it the way you'd ask someone to pass the mustard. I said no. I said it clearly, with eye contact, the way I say things I mean permanently. He shrugged. All right, sis, just figured I'd ask. I figured that was the end of it. The irony beat lands here, and I need to sit with it for a moment. I spend my professional life identifying the exact point where a structure's integrity was compromised. Usually, years before anyone noticed. I trace the failure backward, through time, through layers of paint and plaster, to the original flaw, and I was living inside a family whose structural failure had been visible for decades if I'd bothered to run the same inspection on the people I loved. I didn't. I inspected buildings. I took my family on faith. After the county alert, I excused myself from the meeting and walked to the parking garage. I sat in my truck with the engine off and the windows up in the September heat. The cab smelled like the graphite pencils I keep in the console. I opened the county recording on my phone and read the transfer documents. The buyer was listed as Covington Holdings LLC. I didn't recognize the entity. The seller was listed as me. The sale price was $310,000, $115,000 below market value for a property I had not agreed to sell, had not signed paperwork for, and had not been informed about until 23 minutes ago. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, which was unusual. She normally lets it go to voicemail during her stories. "Hi, baby," she said. "How's Portland?" "Mom," I said. "Why is there a deed recorded selling my house?" The pause was 1 second too long. Then her voice shifted into the register I have heard since childhood. Warm, dismissive, slightly impatient. "Oh, honey. Darnell explained all that to you months ago. You said it was fine. We handled the paperwork since you were traveling." I did not say it was fine. "Well," she said, and I could hear her settling deeper into her chair, the creak of the recliner familiar even through the phone. "It's done now. The money's already allocated. Darnell's restaurant opens in 6 weeks. You should be proud of him." I held the phone away from my ear. I looked at the concrete wall of the parking garage. A crack ran from floor to ceiling. I could see from the displacement pattern that it was structural, not cosmetic, probably from differential settlement. My brain cataloged it automatically while the rest of me went very still. "Who signed my name?" I asked Marin. "Don't make this difficult. Family helps family." I ended the call. I opened my notebook, the same kind I use on inspection sites, gridded, spiral-bound, with the date written in the upper corner. I wrote 3 things. Covington Holdings LLC. $310,000. Mom answered too fast, then I drove back to the hotel. I had an inspection report due. I finished it. I am the kind of person who finishes things. I did not call Darnell. I did not call my mother back. I did not call my father, Raymond, who had been notably silent. I called a real estate litigation attorney named Constance Park, whose name I'd kept from a conference, Huiz at Crescenens, 2 years earlier where she'd presented on deed fraud patterns in residential transactions. She answered her own phone, which I appreciated. I described the situation in the same voice I use for deposition testimony. Flat, sequential, without editorializing. She asked 4 questions. She told me to send her the recorded documents. She told me not to speak to my family about specifics. She told me that if what I was describing was accurate, the transfer might be void on multiple grounds, but that nothing would be simple or fast. Then she said, "Who has power of attorney over your affairs?" "No one," I said. "I've never granted one." The silence on her end lasted 3 full seconds. Then she said, "Then someone used something else. Let's find out what." That night in the hotel, I pulled every document I could access remotely. My county's recorder office had digitized filings back to 2019. I found the deed easily enough. It had been recorded that afternoon. But then I found something else. A quitclaim deed, recorded 4 days earlier, transferring the property from me to my mother, Lorraine Okello, and then a warranty deed, recorded the same day, transferring from Lorraine to Covington Holdings LLC, 2 transfers, 2 separate recordings. The first moved the house from me to my mother. The second moved it from my mother to Darnell's entity. They had laundered my property through my own mother's name to make the final sale look clean. I sat with my laptop on the hotel bed, and I felt something inside me become perfectly still. Not anger. Something colder. The recognition that this had been planned, with the kind of deliberate sequencing that requires multiple parties, a notary, a title company willing to rush, and at least one forged signature, because I had not signed a quitclaim deed. I had not signed anything. I started building a timeline on the gridded paper. I used the same format I use for failure investigations. Date, event, source document, discrepancy noted. I worked until 2 in the morning. By the time I turned the light off, I had identified 3 things that were wrong with the quitclaim deed before I even saw the original. First, the notary acknowledgement listed a date when I was verifiably in Boise, Idaho, conducting a parking structure inspection for a municipal client. I had hotel receipts, site photographs with GPS metadata, and a signed inspection log with the building manager's countersignature. Second, the quitclaim deed had been prepared by a title company I had never used. Pacific Ridge Settlements, a small shop I later confirmed, was owned by a man named Franklin Teague, who had previously been Darnell's landlord. Third, and this was the detail that only I would catch, the property descriptions on the quitclaim contained an error. It referenced the lot dimensions, using the original 1987 subdivision plat numbers. But my property had been resurveyed in 2020 when I added the detached garage, and the legal description had been updated in the county records. Whoever prepared this deed had pulled an outdated legal description, one that hadn't been current for 4 years. No competent title search would have produced that number. Syscod. Someone had grabbed an old document and copied from it without checking. That was the almost correct flaw. The description was 95% right. The lot dimensions were within 2 feet of accurate. A casual reader would never notice. But I had personally stood in my yard with a surveyor while he drove new pins, and I knew, to the inch, that those numbers were wrong. Constance Park received my documentation package 2 days later. She called me within an hour. Her voice was careful, precise. "Marin," she said, "this quitclaim deed was filed using a legal description that hasn't been valid since your 2020 resurvey. Combined with your verified absence on the notary date, we have strong initial grounds to challenge the entire chain of title. But I want to see the notary's journal." I returned from Portland on a Wednesday. I drove past Sycamore Lane and saw a contractor's van in my driveway. Someone was already renovating my kitchen. The kitchen I'd tiled myself, on my hands and knees, using a wet saw I'd bought secondhand. I gripped the steering wheel and kept driving. Constance obtained the notary's journal through a subpoena. The entry corresponding to my quitclaim deed showed a signature and a thumbprint. The thumbprint was smudged, almost useless. But the signature in the journal didn't match mine. The M was soft where mine is angular. The loop on the O was closed where mine is open. I know my own handwriting, the way I know a building's bones. Someone had practiced, and they'd gotten close. But close is not correct. Then I found something else. Constance had requested the full file from Pacific Ridge Settlements. In the closing package, there was a copy of my driver's license, required for notarization. Except it wasn't my current license. It was my old one, expired 2 years prior, the one I'd reported lost after it fell out of my wallet at my mother's house during Thanksgiving dinner 2022. I sat in Constance's office reading that detail, and I did not move for a long time. My mother's house, Thanksgiving 2022. I'd turned her place upside down looking for that license. She'd helped me look. She'd said it must have fallen behind the couch cushions and gotten vacuumed up. She'd had my expired license for 2 years, and someone had used it to verify my identity to a notary I'd never met. I told Constance. She nodded slowly. "That's your mother in the chain," she said, "not just as a pass-through on the deed. She was the source of the identification document. That makes her a participant, not a bystander. the timeline was becoming clear. My brother wanted capital for his restaurant. My mother provided access, the key to my house for showings, the expired license for identification, her own name as the pass-through entity on the deed. My father, Raymond, who had remained conspicuously silent through all of this, had provided something I discovered next. He was the registered agent of Covington Holdings LLC, 3 family members, 3 roles, 1 property, my property. I should tell you about my cousin Jerome, because he matters to how this ends. Jerome is my father's brother's son. Raised alongside us, close enough to be a sibling, distant enough to see clearly. He worked in my father's plumbing supply business for 9 years. He'd been at every holiday dinner, every cookout, every hospital visit. And when I called him to ask a simple question, had he known about the sale, his silence told me everything before his words did. He said, "Marin, I heard them talking about it at the 4th of July. Your dad and Darnell. They were in the garage. I thought it was hypothetical. I didn't think they'd actually do it." He paused. "Then, I should have told you. I know that now." He didn't offer more. I didn't push. But something in his voice sounded like a man standing at the edge of a decision he hadn't yet made. Constance filed a lease pendens against the property, freezing it. She filed a quiet title action. She referred the forged documents to the district attorney's office, Van Ut Infield, where a fraud investigator named Mitchell Crane began assembling his own timeline. Darnell called me for the first time 3 weeks after I'd discovered the sale. His voice carried the same unbothered authority my mother's did. The family register of people who believe they are owed cooperation. "Sis, you're blowing this out of proportion. The house was just sitting there appreciating while you traveled. We put it to use. When the restaurant takes off, you'll see your money back double." I said nothing. He filled the silence. "You're being selfish, Marin. You don't even live there full-time." Meanwhile, I'm trying to build something. Dad put up the LLC, Mom handled the logistics, and all you had to do was nothing. We did everything for you. I let those words sit in the air between us. Then I said one thing. "You didn't ask me, Darnell. You forged my name." "That's dramatic," he said. "You're always dramatic." "Mom signed the quitclaim as your representative. It's a family arrangement." I hung up. I added his exact words to my timeline notebook. Date, time, direct quote. The confrontation happened at my father's retirement dinner. Raymond Okello, 40 years in the plumbing supply business, a pillar of Glendale Baptist Church, a man whose name was engraved on a brass plaque at the community recreation center he'd helped fund. His retirement party was held in the back room of Marchetti's, the Italian restaurant where he'd hosted every family milestone for 2 decades. 60 people, white tablecloths, a projection screen showing photos of his career. He believed he owned that room. I arrived in a charcoal blazer and flat shoes, a leather portfolio under my arm. My mother saw me first, and her face performed 3 emotions in rapid sequence: surprise, relief, then a flicker of something cautious. My father stood at the head table, ruddy and expansive, shaking hands. When he saw me, he opened his arms. "There's my girl," he called across the room. "I knew you'd come." I sat at the table assigned to me. I ate the bread. I let the first 2 toasts pass: colleagues, old friends, a deacon from the church. And then Darnell stood, because of course he did, and began thanking our father for everything he'd built, for sacrifices, for teaching his children that family comes first. I stood up. "I'd like to add something," I said. "Since we're talking about what Dad built." The room turned. My father's smile held, but his eyes changed. I opened the portfolio. I did not rush. Dian's 19. I placed the first document on the table in front of my father, the quitclaim deed with the outdated legal description and the forged signature. "This is a deed transferring my home, valued at $425,000, signed with my name on a date I was in Boise, Idaho. 200 miles away. I set the GPS-tagged inspection photographs beside it. These are my site photos from that day. Time-stamped, geotagged. I was not in this county. My father's hand moved toward the documents. I placed the second page before he could speak. This is the notary journal entry. The identification used was my expired driver's license, the one I reported lost at Thanksgiving 2022. At my mother's house, I looked at my mother. She had gone gray. My father found his voice. "Marin, this is not the place." He gripped the table edge. "You are embarrassing yourself. You agreed to this. I never agreed to anything. Your mother said you were on board." He turned to Lorraine. "Tell her. Tell everyone." My mother's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Darnell stood. "This is a family matter," he said loudly, looking at the other guests. "My sister is confused. She's been stressed. She doesn't understand what." I set the third document down. The resurvey from 2020, showing the correct legal description beside the incorrect one on the deed. Whoever prepared this deed used property dimensions that haven't existed in 4 years. A competent transfer would have caught that. An honest one would have required my actual presence. My father tried one more angle. His voice dropped, intimate, appealing to the room. "After everything I've done for this family, 40 years of work, and this is the thanks I get. My own daughter making accusations at my retirement." I waited, I said nothing. I let the room hold its breath, and then Jerome stood up. My cousin, from 3 tables back, in a shirt he'd ironed for the occasion. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "Uncle Ray," he said. "I was in the garage on the 4th of July. I heard you and Darnell planning this. You said, and I wrote it down that night because it bothered me. You said she'd never know because she's always traveling." Jerome looked at me, then back at my father. "I should have said something sooner. I'm saying it now." The room was silent. 60 people who had known my father for decades, watching him shrink in real time. I picked up my documents. I looked at my father, at the brass plaque on the wall behind him, at the projection screen showing 30 years of handshakes, and I said the only thing I'd planned to say, directly to him. "You didn't ask me for help, Dad. You decided my life's work was a resource you could allocate without consulting me. That's not family. That's embezzlement with a holiday schedule." I closed the portfolio. I did not stay for dessert. The legal consequences arrived the way structural failures do, slowly, then all at once. The quiet title action proceeded without meaningful opposition. Once Constance presented the forged signature analysis, the GPS evidence, the expired license chain, and Jerome's sworn declaration, the court declared both deeds void. Title returned to my name within 4 months. She's funding the venue deposit. The district attorney charged my mother with identity fraud for providing the expired license and misrepresenting herself as my authorized agent. She pleaded no contest and received 2 years probation and a restitution order. My father was charged with conspiracy to commit deed fraud. His case took longer, 8 months of motions and continuances, but the evidence was architectural in its completeness. He pleaded guilty to a reduced charge. The brass plaque at the recreation center was quietly removed. Darnell's restaurant never opened. The frozen title meant the funds Covington Holdings had counted on were clawed back by the title company's insurer. His LLC was dissolved. His investors, 2 friends from college who had believed the property acquisition was legitimate, withdrew and filed their own civil claims. Pacific Ridge Settlements lost its license after the state investigated the notary's journal and found 3 other irregular transactions in the same 12-month period. Franklin Teague's name appeared in a local paper in a context he will not recover from professionally. Jerome and I had dinner a month after the ruling. He apologized again. Longer this time, with more weight. He said he'd spent the whole summer knowing and telling himself it wasn't his business. I told him I understood, and I meant it. I also told him that understanding is not the same as forgetting, and that trust, once rebuilt, takes a different shape than it had before. He nodded. He didn't ask for more than I offered. We still talk. It's quieter than it was. But it's honest. Brooke, Darnell's wife, funding the venue deposit, who had known about the restaurant plan but claimed she hadn't known about the forged deed, showed up at my door 6 weeks after the court order. She stood on my porch, holding a bottle of wine like a peace offering. I let her in. She sat on my rebuilt kitchen floor and cried, and said she should have asked more questions. I believe she meant it. I also believe she had benefited from not asking for as long as it was comfortable. I thanked her for coming. I did not tell her everything was fine. I refinished the kitchen myself that winter, ripped out whatever the contractor had started, and began again from the subfloor. I chose different tile this time. A matte sage green, something I'd wanted for years, but kept putting off because I was always traveling, always working, always funding someone else's timeline instead of my own. What I know now is this: silence in a family operates exactly like deferred maintenance in a building. It doesn't eliminate the problem. It allows the problem to migrate deeper into the structure, to transfer load onto members that were never designed to carry it, until the day someone walks across a floor and feels the give beneath their feet. By then, the damage has been compounding for years. The people who stayed quiet, Jerome, Brooke, the neighbors who saw contractors at my house while I was gone and said nothing, they weren't evil. They were doing what people do in systems that punish questions. They were trusting the structure. But a structure that requires your silence to remain standing was never sound. It was only unexamined. I do not hate my family. I have simply stopped being the foundation they built upon without inspection. And I have learned that a boundary is not a wall you build against someone. It is a load limit you finally enforce, so that the structure can stand honestly, carrying only what it was designed to hold: $310,000. That was the number they assigned to my life's work when they thought I wasn't watching. I am watching now. And the house on Sycamore Lane, with its new sage tile and its correct legal description and its title clear as daylight, holds only what I choose to put inside it. When you watched it happen and stayed quiet. When you saw someone's name on a document and didn't ask whether they'd signed it. What were you protecting? Because it wasn't them. This story is a fictional narrative created for entertainment, education, and dramatic reflection. We hope it reminded you that your dignity is not negotiable, and that setting a boundary, even a painful one, can be an act of love for yourself and everyone the pattern would have reached next.